So the question is, and maybe we'll never even know the answer to this one, who exactly was interested in spying on Nitin Gadkari, and should there be a probe as the Congress party is demanding? We've got Sambit Patra of the BJP with us, commentator Aarti Jairath tonight here in the studio with us. Also, Pawan Verma from the JDU, Rajya Sabha MP, joins us tonight. We'll be joined by Abhishek Singh of the Congress party shortly. Mr. Verma, do you share the Congress's view on this, that there needs to be a discussion in Parliament on this, and B, a thorough probe? Because, you know, the facts of this case seem to be so murky at the moment. You have an official denial from Mr. Gadkari saying that nothing was found. We have learned that, in fact, during a sweep, the intelligence agencies actually did find a device at his home. So it's all very perplexing, actually.
No, the facts are very clear as I see it, Nidhi. There is some evidence that the house of a cabinet minister in the current government, someone who's obviously part of the inner core group of the Prime Minister, and also a key link with the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, a listening device has been found. Mr. Gadkari in his denial says the report is highly speculative. Highly speculative is somewhat different from saying that nothing was found.
He has said that today, though.
If you say it's highly...
He said today that no devices were found at my residence.
No, now this quick denial in the light of a report that there were indeed listening devices of a highly sophisticated nature, I think as an ordinary citizen, any of us beyond party lines are keen for the government to make an authoritative statement on the subject, and if need be, discuss it in Parliament, because the fact that there could be even the possibility of a senior cabinet minister in this government being under some form of surveillance, whatever the source or the originator of that surveillance may be, is a serious matter. And the BJP itself believes that such matters are serious, because earlier, when Mr. Pranab Mukherjee complained as finance minister that his office has been bugged, the BJP sought to have a very strong clarification from the government. So I don't see why the reticence at this stage. The country is interested.
Okay, so Sambit Patra, is it fair to at least have a probe which gets to the bottom of this? Because obviously there are big concerns. If this has indeed happened, if it has happened, then it's quite serious.
No, I believe, Nidhi, this is a classical case of trying to create a smoke without a fire. We don't have a fire and we all are trying to create a smoke around it. But in fact, what Mr. Pawan Verma, the respected parliamentarian, was speaking right now, he had an answer to the whole thing in his question itself. He said that Pranab Da had complained about the whole incidents to the Prime Minister, and that's the result as to why there was a whole amount of brouhaha that was created around the scene that we saw about 2 years ago. But there's no complaint in this case. The minister about whom we are talking, has he complained? Right from the very beginning he has said, and he has maintained his stand, that it was speculative, and he has denied. Speculative and denied, if we are discussing on these two words, let me clarify that it is speculative because we were trying to speculate on a news which was in a particular newspaper, and he has denied categorically because there was a lot of discussions going on around this particular subject, a lot of news being tried to be formed around this subject, which he said that it is not essential. Even the Home Minister said since there was nothing found, and the Minister has himself denied, so naturally there is no need for any kind of investigation.
Except that you would have just seen our report. No, you know, intelligence agencies are telling us they did actually find a device in his home. Now, there's a lot of stuff that intelligence will say in private that they will not say in public. See, so does this matter at least require a probe?
For the consumption of the country, for the consumption of any mature government and mature discussion, anything that comes as a public discourse is something which can debate, which is debatable, which we can discuss, which can be ordinary inquiry upon. And as far as private discussions are concerned, I don't buy them. Everyone in this particular case is supposed to have a source that we from our sources come to know of this. But let me remind you, the final most source is the government, and the government has denied it.
Okay, so let me take this to Abhishek Singh. Abhishek Singh, if Mr. Gadkari is denying it, and the BJP is saying that there was no device found at Mr. Gadkari's home, why is the Congress insisting on a discussion and a probe? And you're pretty much blaming the government for doing this to its own minister after hearing the official briefing today.
Look, two or three things. First and foremost, till midday or late today, I have at least heard no denial from Mr. Gadkari. The only statement one has heard is that reports about this are speculative. I don't consider that to be a categorical denial. That's point number one. And I fail to understand that something as simple as saying, I hereby categorically deny that any kind of device has been found at my residence or any other place. That would what I would call a denial. In fact, his denial makes it worse. It suggests an element of prevarication or circumvention.
To be fair to him,
Second,
he did tweet this morning, Dr. Singhvi,
report,
that no devices were found at my residence anywhere. This is Nitin Gadkari's tweet.
Now, yeah.
I don't know if he did if he answered this on camera, but he has tweeted that.
He has not. That's the whole point. He has not, and people have asked him, and the only thing he has given on camera or officially is speculative. Number two, the report which has been published gives details of his residence, gives details of what is found or in what manner it is found. And I think at the minimum, either there should be, I have no problem if tomorrow there is a comprehensive categorical denial by him and equally a clarification by the newspaper that it is unable to stand by a report which is completely false, then there is no problem. An inquiry doesn't mean that I am asking him or the newspaper to admit it. But if you were to put what the newspaper has put and what Mr. Gadkari has said basically officially speculative and what you are now saying about denial, all the three are contradictory.
No, so then I'll take that to Sambit Patra. The Congress is saying that it's not a categorical denial. And I think part of the problem is the newspaper from which this originated from. It has links or has had links with your spokesperson MJ Akbar. So I think that is why people took it seriously. I'll ask Karti about that.
Yeah, first and foremost, I believe in this particular case, the Congress, which is left with no particular issue, is trying to heat its palm from a non-existent fire. And I believe they will not get any warmth from this fire. Secondly, and most importantly, as far as the denial of Mr. Nitin Gadkari is concerned, I believe Mr. Abhishek Singhvi is a very respected parliamentarian. He should go through the tweets and through the news item which very vehemently says that Mr. Nitin Gadkari and the Home Ministry has denied. I believe it is for everyone to see. It is going on throughout the day in the news. And as far as your question to me that the newspaper which speaks about this whole episode belonged to, I would say belonged to, does not belong right now to Mr. MJ Akbar is concerned. Let me say, well, yes, every newspaper is of repute. If this newspaper is to be believed on every aspect, to which Mr. Nitin Gadkari replied by saying it is speculative, I would say Mr. Abhishek Singhvi would now have to answer, because about a week ago this newspaper in its headlines carried the news that Rahul Gandhi is to adopt a son of Priyanka Vadra. So if that is true, if they believe every little bit of news that any newspaper publishes, I believe the denial of Mr. Rahul Gandhi is also required as of now.
Before I come to Abhishek Singhvi on that, you have Subramaniam Swamy's face 1 second on the graphic there, and Subramaniam Swamy, who is your one of your party leaders, was on record to say yesterday that yes, Mr. Gadkari, there was a bug found at his house, and he's basically blamed it on the Americans and the NSA issue. So why is the BJP also then speaking in different voices on this?
No, BJP is not speaking in different voices. Yes, definitely Mr. Subramaniam Swamy is a very tall leader of our party and of the country, but two important things. It's not that yesterday he said that yes, a device has been found in Nitin Gadkari place and it is America which placed it. He said if a device has been found in Mr. Nitin Gadkari's place, it's a matter of serious concern, and I believe it was the NSA of 2010, the court ruling. Yes, he did not say one bug has been found.
And then last October,
Nidhi, let me remind you of the recent most statement that
speculated that it was done by the Americans.
I mean, about 2 hours ago, he has come out and he has spoken to the cameras and he has said that if at all there is no speculation of espionage by the verdicts of Mr. Nitin Gadkari, there is no need of creating a furore around this whole issue. Then probably no spying took place. This is his own statement. So I believe we have to be calculative in this case, in the sense we have to take Mr. Subramaniam Swamy's statement in toto, what he spoke yesterday and what he spoke today as well.
See, this is what he said. Bugs were planted in Gadkari's house last October. Aarti, this is what Subramaniam Swamy said. Who did it to my friend? Now, this is getting really, really bizarre.
No, Nidhi, in fact, if you look at this whole episode, what was being said yesterday was a little different to what is being said today. So, what has happened in the last 24 hours to change the statements from various BJP leaders, including Nitin Gadkari himself? You know, I think that itself is worthy of a probe. The fact is that we have not yet had a comprehensive denial which would cap this controversy. And I think that is what is really necessary. You know, you have Nitin Gadkari one day saying highly speculative, which is a really, you know,
Neither
not
here nor
really a
there.
denial. And then today he's saying, no device was found. So how has he changed his statement from yesterday to today? He could have said the same thing yesterday, that no device was found. Why is Subramaniam Swamy first saying yesterday that, you know, a bug was found last October, and today saying, you know, something different? So, you know, what we really need, and Parliament is in session, you know, tomorrow's a holiday, but it will meet on Wednesday. And I think what we need is a comprehensive, categorical statement from the government on this issue, so that we can stop all this
Who do you
speculation.
think did it though?
Sorry?
Who do you think did it? Because do you agree with the Congress theory, which seems to be pointing towards this government spying on its own minister?
Well, I mean,
and Subramaniam Swamy hinting that it's the Americans.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the fact is that this comes, and the, you know, the background to this is, you know, the revelations by Snowden, who blew the whistle on, you know, the surveillance operations by the National Security Agency of the United States. That's the background. The point is, when were these devices found? Is it October, like Subramaniam Swamy says, or recently? I mean, that changes the whole thing, isn't it? Because if it was in October, then actually it's really strange that the Congress should be demanding the inquiry,
I just
because
want
the
to bring
UPA
a
was in
news
power
update.
at that
Before
time.
I go back to Abhishek Singh, just a quick news update, in fact, from my colleague Sudhir Ranjan Sen, who's reported on this story. In fact, the Intelligence Bureau has now launched an official inquiry into this. In fact, they're telling us that the bugs that were allegedly recovered from Mr. Gadkari's house in Mumbai were a very old technology, the kind of equipment used in the late 80s and the early 90s. Very interesting information coming in there. Abhishek Singh, you were raising your hand to respond to Sambit Patra, but he had a point. Are you going to go by newspaper reports alone on this, or there has to be something more to substantiate it?
This is getting curiouser and curiouser as an Alice in Wonderland, and I am one of those who am prepared to say, closed, chapter closed, there has been a denial. But the more I hear this, the more I am convinced not only that there has been these bugs, but that apparently there is a cover-up going on. I have 5 versions now, Nidhi. I'll be very quick, but it's very important to analyze this properly. There is Mr. Gadkari's statement, speculative. The press report about residents. Now the IB talking of Mumbai. The press report specifically talks of Delhi, by the way. 3rd version is IB in Mumbai. 4th version is not anybody on the road, Mr. MJ Akbar, in a signed editorial article or in a signed piece. And 5th, Mr. Subramaniam Swamy holding forth in great detail and accusing us. Now I ask myself, Nidhi, suppose there is in fact a bug found which the government wants to cover up, you would have exactly this kind of a complete variation within 24 hours and at least 5 versions. So 2 things in ending. 1, these 5 versions completely justify a full-scale comprehensive inquiry. In 24 hours, I have identified 5 versions. Second, it appears that these inconsistencies, contradictions can only happen when the government, with or without Mr. Gadkari, is trying to cover up something.
But you've also already jumped to conclusions that the Modi government is doing it to its own minister. Your spokesperson today said it's very commonplace.
Look at the kind of versions you are getting. 5 versions.
No.
Have you ever heard of 5 versions?
But you have assumed.
One simple sentence.
No. But is the Congress laying the blame at the Prime Minister's doorstep? It's commonplace to snoop in Gujarat, is what your spokesperson said today. The Sutradhar has come to Delhi.
No, I am not. I am not in the habit of making irresponsible statements. I am saying I am prepared to say matter is closed if Mr. Gadkari says.
Are you saying
Shakti Singh Goyal said this today.
Yeah, are you saying
Surjewala said that. Ranjit Surjewala said that.
Inquiry. I am saying that the absence of an inquiry raises much more suspicion. And please let us not have facetious examples that do we believe every report of a news report in Guardian. This is Mr. Akbar's signed article.
Okay, 1 second, Pawan Verma. Where would you think that the problem lies here? Who do you think is behind this? I mean, it is a very speculative question, but everyone seems to have their own theory. One theory is that since the BJP government knew that the Americans were apparently spying on BJP leaders, they would have had their homes swept for bugs anyway. So this appears to be an inside job. Another theory is that this is something that's been left over from the UPA because it allowed the Americans to snoop on BJP leaders. Where are you placing your bets?
Now, Nidhi, first of all, Sambit's point that in the case of the Congress, the minister complained is neither here nor there. the question is not whether the minister has complained. In some governments, the minister can complain. Perhaps in some other governments, the minister cannot or believes he should
not.
not.
JDU government.
The fact of the matter, let me finish, Sambit, I didn't interrupt you. The fact of the matter is that there has been a news story about a surveillance on a cabinet minister. There could be two theories to it, because the first response of the use of the word speculative adds a great deal of mystery to this episode. One response could be indeed that it is the NSA, because we know through Snowden that there was some perhaps surveillance being kept on the BJP party. But the kind of devices as reported that have been used are so primitive or perhaps so outdated or not modern enough that it probably makes it difficult to believe that they would resort to surveillance through such tactics. Now, if that is ruled out, but again we need an inquiry to rule it out, then there are other possibilities which open up. It's not that surveillance has not been carried out by governments. Perhaps to some degree all governments do it. We have the example even in Gujarat of Snoopgate, where there was a surveillance carried out. I'm not going into the merits of it.